So yeah, thank you for joining this session, returning after the coffee, appreciate it. So if you have any questions for any of the speakers, please go ahead now. Carolyn.
For those of you that don't know me, I'm Carolyn Vanderbogert from the University of Münster. Sort of like a promotion here, you mentioned that the Sci Space E is part of this framework. The presentation that Jesse Flahout made last year about it was the work that we did in the workshop doing in the working group for that. That has been published now in Nature Microgravity last week. So please look for Flahout et al. And my question is then for Aidan, kind of in that scientific framework, and also in view of sort of recent developments for Mars sample return and the agreements between NASA and ESA, does a sample return laboratory fit into the expert part of the ESA framework, and what are the plans for something like that?
I think it's a really, excuse me, sit down a little bit. That's a really good question. It's a difficult one to give a firm answer to because there's a number of different elements within ESA who would have a lot to say in that conversation. And certainly when the sample analog curation facility was first envisaged many years ago, that might have been ultimately where it went. But I think now you're starting to see maybe that there could be a more push towards having that kind of facility in a member state being run there. Moving forward that way, and then the Vulcan facility be more as a kind of a geoscience technical support to that. But it's a really good question. It's part of a kind of ongoing conversation that's happening in ESA, so I can't give a very clear answer. I will also look maybe to Fran, because maybe you have a perspective on this one. So,
I mean, my background, I'm biased, I would love sample return, but currently I'm afraid it doesn't seem to be on the vision. By all means, chat to James, who might know more as well. There has been a high-level advisory group that talked about building European capability, really joining the big guns out there and starting to build these sort of capabilities. Potentially sample return could be explored in that aspect, but currently it's not a main focus in the near term. By all means, the contributions to how you would, look at landing sites. There's going to be a workshop on that later to sort of gauge the interest and the capability around these other ways you can contribute to such missions. That's certainly the way we can contribute in Europe with our sample expertise.
Yeah, I'm Bernard Frank, ex-ESA. Now I'm running my own agency, but really I was very impressed by what is presented by my colleagues. But I have actually a question for Francesca and for my Italian colleagues also. I was very impressed by how concrete your action here. So you have a 30 million euro for this Earth, Moon, Mars. And my question is, how much is equipment and how much will be for workforce? I have a PhD, postdoc, and I suppose it will be also open to every European, or is it only for Italian?
Yes, I imagine that a similar question would be asked. So lots of money are for industry in order to build all this infrastructure, but a very huge part are also for the recruitment. So we are engaging a new student and a new program, not half and half, but a big part. And of course, when everything will be realized, it will be for everyone, not only for Italy. This is an effort that we are trying to have here in Italy, but is for the whole community, of course.
On one of the upcoming EL3 landers. So if you're going to have one every 2 years going to 2040, right? Surely one of them can be for sample return. So how do we persuade you to do that?
When you ask so nicely, Katie.
Thank you. Please, pretty please.
So the question is that there's still a drive for sample return in the community. How is this something that you could make happen in ESA? It's kind of back at you. You're the one that needs to canvas with your national agencies, sort of unite together, really get a coherent message and bring that to, so we've got the member states supporting. I mean, we're an agency and it's true, it's right, we represent the member states. So if there is that will there, please do discuss, do get the interest from your governments, your member states, and funding to support this as well. But there are activities and ways we can be getting involved in the meantime. But yeah, I'm happy to discuss and see how we could perhaps make this happen. In the terms of Argonaut, the first 3 missions will be predominantly cargo and support of Artemis and infrastructure. Doesn't mean that there may not be a small secondary passenger available for some science that can also help to contribute to the kind of sustained presence on the moon. But beyond that, in the mid-2030s, absolutely, that we have looked at some of what I presented, how you could utilize the lander. It didn't, in any of those concepts, have the sample return, but there are certainly contributions you can make to be really well characterizing anywhere that you would return a sample from as part of an international lunar campaign, because you know yourself, it's only the rock you poke back here is only as good as the knowledge that you can put it back into its original geological context. So there are still things we can do even if we don't have the rocks back directly via ESA anyway.
Can I also just jump in? Sorry, thanks. Just to back up front a little bit. Sample return is really important to us in ESA. That's something which is going to appear very prominently in anything you see from us is going to be there. Now, the way we're going to do that initially is through cooperating with the United States on Artemis. That's where those first samples are coming back. And so our plan is to be deeply involved in the preparation and the implementation of sample return with crew to Artemis. Argonaut is currently being used as a major element in our cooperation with NASA. So we would not use Argonaut for a sample return mission beyond it being a contributor to the crewed element. Now, where we do see an opportunity potentially in the future is there is a bit of is in increasing the amount of sample we can get back with the crewed missions. Maybe there's things we can do there to help to improve the sample return capability on Artemis. We have looked at sample return missions which use Argonaut as the delivery mechanism for the sample return stage. So we understand what that looks like. A decision was taken programmatically some time ago that we would not follow up on that as a first mission. It is something we might come and look at again for something we would do later in the 2030s. It's unlikely we'd be able to do it before there just because of the amount that it would cost the scope of the program. But it is our firm intention to create as many opportunities as possible for the sample return community in Europe through our work and through the cooperation with the United States and potentially with others too. You can column me later.
James. I think the one last question.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. So I was just going to follow up Katie's question. I guess it's great that we'll have all these samples coming back from Artemis, but we know where they'll be coming back from. They'll be coming back from the South Pole, and that's great and very important. But I guess the question is, if we want samples back from places where astronauts may not go for many decades, this is where we might need options. And it seems that something like a sample return implemented via an EL3 could be a way to doing that. And so my question is, ESA used to have something called the Heracles concept, and that seemed to have some potential, but what's happened to it?
Yeah, I'm passing that to James.
So I mentioned earlier, we had studied what that would mean. It was something that was still on the table because there's only so many Argonaut missions we can afford. We want to cooperate with the United States and be deeply involved in Artemis crewed missions. We cannot do that and do an Argonaut sample return, right? So, and the priority is to become a deep partner in the crewed missions. I don't know if there are colleagues from NASA here. I think when Jake talks about the Argonaut plan, about their Artemis plans, he might be able to say something regarding samples that don't come from the lunar South Pole and opportunities that may come up in that too. Yeah, I think there will be samples coming back from places that are not the South Pole because I think everyone knows that everybody wants it.
I think we're going to have to close it there. I just want to say thank you to my co-chair for your very inspiring chat there. And I'm sure there are loads of lessons learned, particularly with international cooperation.
Okay, I think let's give them a round of applause, please. Yeah, before we finish.